The next talk is from our Shaykh Suhaib Hasan Abdul Ghaffar. Like I mentioned, Shaykh Ziyad, he had ijaza from Shaykh Abdul Ghaffar Hasan, the father of Shaykh Suhaib. I mean, Shaykh Suhaib's great-grandfather, Shaykh Abdul Jabbar Umarpuri, like Shaykh Hamad Lakvi and Shaykh Adnan Rashid, he was as well, his ancestor, he was as well a student of Mian Nazir Hussain Delvi, and he was a great scholar and muhaddis. Likewise, Shaykh Suhaib Hasan's grandfather, Shaykh Abdul Sattar Hasan, but he passed away young, but he was a great scholar. And his father, Shaykh Abdul Ghaffar Hasan, he graduated from Darul Hadith Rahmani and Delhi, and he benefited from the great scholars Nazir Ahmad Rahmani and Ubaidullah Mubarak Puri, the author of Mir'atul Mafati. And Shaykh Abdul Ghaffar Hasan taught for many years in Medina University after Shaykh Albani left. So he was the scholar who was recommended to be by Shaykh Ismail Salafi when Shaykh Ibn Baz asked him from some scholars of Hadith. Shaykh Ismail Salafi recommended Hafiz Muhammad Gondelvi and Shaykh Abdul Ghaffar Hasan Rahmani. Shaykh Suhaib Hasan, he benefited from Hafiz Muhammad Gondelvi, Shaykh Abdul Aziz Ibn Baz, Shaykh Nasiruddin Albani, and all the great scholars who were teaching at the time, Shaykh Muhammad Amin and Shaykh Qaiti, and all the great scholars. And today, mashallah, because his father was teacher in Medina, Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali came to teach after in Medina University. And Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali is linked as well with the great institution in India, Nadwa. So this is why we wanted to, there's many talks, biographies of Shaykh Albani, Shaykh Ibn Sayyid, Ibn Baz, of many Saudi scholars, and there's we felt it would be a good inspiration for our youth to know that the great scholars, not only they're in Syria, they have been in Morocco. Sheikh Zaid Fatah has on in January talk on Sheikh Abdul Hamid ibn Badis. So Sheikh Taqiudin Hilali, lots of people benefit from his Noble Quran, but people don't know the detail of this great scholar. So Sheikh Suhaib Hasan met him many times and benefited from him. So that's why we found it was a good opportunity from Sheikh Suhaib Hasan. So without any further ado, I will mute myself and let Sheikh Suhaib Hasan, mashallah, to enlighten us.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. My dear brothers, sisters who are listening to this talk, I am very thankful to Brother Ali to ask me to speak about such a great scholar, Shaykh Muhammad Taqiuddin bin Abdul Qadir Al-Hilali, whom I knew personally, but I want to introduce him to you as a great da'iyah, a great person who was engaged in dawah as-salafiyah throughout his life. I want to introduce him like a great scholar of Arabic language and a person with a lot of poetry, and that is with eloquence. And some of his poetry got so difficult words as well that you need a dictionary to understand them. Shaykh Muhammad Taqiuddin bin Abdul Qadir Al-Hilali, who was born in 1893. 1893, that is the same year, 1311, about which our other brother Muhammad Ziyad Tukla was speaking when he mentioned about Sheikh Bahjat al-Bitar, because he was born in 1311. So he was born in Damascus, which is the eastern part of Islamic world at that time. And Shaykh Taqiuddin Hilali was born in the western part of Arabic or Islamic world, that is the country known as Al-Maghrib. Al-Maghrib, now it is also known as Morocco. And he was born in a small town, small village called Farah, which is very near to Saljamasa in the south of Al-Maghrib. There is one striking thing I have noticed when I was reading about him, that there is a similarity between him and my father, Shaykh Abdul Ghaffar Hasan. Shaykh Taqiuddin was born in 1893. Exactly 20 years later, my father was born in 1913 in India. Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali died in 1987, aged 94 years, and according to Hijrah, 96 years. And my father died 20 years, exactly 20 years after him in 2007, aged 94 years, and according to Hijrah, 96 years. So in age, they were similar to each other. And then there is another similarity that both got connections with India. And then in the end, they were teacher in the great seat of knowledge, Islamic University of Al-Madinah. Now in this talk, I wanted to speak about, you can say, 9 different aspects. So these different, you can say the title. Number 1 is introduction. Second, his journeys, because he journeyed a lot, he traveled a lot. So I just want to give you a very short briefing about his journeys as well. Third, the main topic is the third and fourth, which is ad-dawa ila Allah. His aspects of dawa ila Allah, wherever he went, wherever he goes, he is busy with dawa ila Allah on the basis of Al-Quran wa Sunnah. The fourth aspect is his debates, his munawarat. And the fifth, his propagation and publications of the books of Salaf. Sixth is feeling of self-sufficiency, al-istighna, and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 7 is his efforts against colonial powers in his days. And number 8, few of his errors. Very seldom a person is going to admit his own errors, but he admitted his errors, and this I found it in his book, and that is the main source of my talk as well. His book, which he has written, Ad-Dawa ila Allah fi Aqtar al-Mukhtalifa. That is his book which he compiled when he was a teacher in Al-Madinah. This is, alhamdulillah, mashallah, is a very fruitful and comprehensive book about his dawah. And the last point is about his death, his children, his wives, and his legacy, his books, his articles. And I don't think I could cover all these points, but so I should be very concise and very brief in some of these issues, and some other I can be speaking in detail. The one thing is very interesting to note that in the beginning of his life, when he was brought up and educated in Al-Maghrib, he was a Tijani, he was a Sufi. He was following a Tijaniya. That was his tariqah. And he traveled, he first took knowledge in his own town. He memorized Quran when he was just 12 years old. And he mentions about his journey to Algeria, and where he got this vision of the Prophet ﷺ, a dream in which the Prophet ﷺ is saying to him, Iqra al-ilm, Iqra al-ilm, read or acquire the knowledge. So he acquired that knowledge from his teacher, Muhammad Sayyidi bin Habibullah of al-Shanqiti, and also another Shaykh, Sayyid Ahmad Sikraj. And then he also joined the Qarawiyyin University in Fas, which is in English is known as Fez. And then he says that after a debate with one of his great Shaykh, Muhammad bin al-Arabi al-Alawi, after a debate with him, he has changed the course of his life. I'd love to find out that book which he wrote, then refuting At-Tijaniya, Al-Hadiya Lefirqat At-Tijaniya. I did not come across that booklet, in which he has given the whole story, how he changed from Tijaniya to the way of Salaf. And because he has traveled a lot, and I'm going to give you, this is the second point, that is about his journeys. After the journeys, I will come back to the Dawa ilallah. So around 21 years, he was in Al-Maghrib, acquiring the knowledge there. So it means that till that age, he got all the knowledges, Arabic language, Quran, Hadith, Fiqh, the famous book in Malikiya, Al-Mazhab, Mukhtasar al-Khalil. He took the knowledge of this book and the other books. So he was well equipped with the knowledge when he started his journeys in 1922. And let me, instead of mentioning the years, I may mention his age. And he was 29 years old. He was 29 years old when he first journeyed to Egypt. And then he stayed there doing some dawah, and I'm going to speak about such aspects of his dawah when he was in Egypt. And after staying there for a few months, it was Hajj time in 1923 when he went to Makkah for Hajj, and it was still the time of Al-Ashraf. And they say that Imam Hussein ibn Ali, that the grandfather of the Jordanian king now, he was the ruler at that time. And when he did his Hajj, he was not able to go to Al-Madinah, because going to Al-Madinah means subjecting yourself to a lot of dangers throughout your journey. So he said to some of his pupils that going to Medina is not the part of Al-Hajj, and the way is not safe for you to travel, because the Bedouins, all that way, they used to loot. They used to take every penny from the travelers. Sometimes they killed them as well. So this is why he did not visit at that time Al-Madinah. And after Hajj, he went to, by sea, he went to India. And in India, that was his first visit. In first visit, he visited all the great, you can say, all the great teachers, all the great teachers who were known at that time in India, like Abdurrahman al-Mubarakpuri, Abdurrahman ibn Abdurrahim al-Mubarakpuri, who is the writer of Tuhfatul Ahfazi, which is an explanation of Sunan al-Tirmizi. So he met him and he took knowledge from him as well. And the great scholar of Arabic, Abdul Majid al-Hariri, and also Khalil Arab. Khalil Arab is the one who later said to Dr. Abdul Ali, the elder brother of Maulana Abul Hasan al-Nadawi, to take him to al-Nadwa, to take him as a teacher, but that is going to come later. So this time he just met these scholars, and among the other scholars, of course, there were many others like Shaykh Hasan bin Muhsin al-Hadidi al-Ansari, Hussein ibn Muhsin al-Hadidi al-Ansari al-Yamani. He was in India at that time, and he took ijazah from him. And Shaykh Hussein ibn Muhsin al-Hadidi al-Ansari al-Yamani, he gave ijazah to Shaykh Muhammad bin Ibrahim, who is later became Mufti of Al-Mamlaka. Right from the beginning, of course, he was the Mufti of Al-Mamlaka. He also visited a great scholar, Hamiduddin Farahi, in his hometown. And then he went to Calcutta, where he met Abul Kalam Azad, and he met his secretary, Abdul Razak Mali Abadi, because Abdul Razak Mali Abadi used to write many articles for after dictation from Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. But he was just like a free thinker. This is why Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali remarked about him that he is a zindiq. He was a zindiq, and he is not a Muslim. And he also visited the son of great scholar Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi, the son Idris, and he knew about his maktaba. And there is a very famous library in Patna, which is known as the Library of Khuda Bakhsh. He visited that library. And in Lucknow, he visited the library of Shaykh Abdul Hayy al-Lakhnawi. And on his way back, when he was going to Bombay to go back to Iraq and to some other countries, he was a guest of Shaykh Abdul Samad Sharafuddin, the famous publisher who has published so many books of Sunnah. He stayed there. And there he came across a young man who is coming from Iraq, whose name is Mustafa Ali Ibrahim. And that person, of course, he was a rich person, and he got introduced to him. And by that introduction, he was able to travel with him without paying any fare, because he was going to Basra. So he took him with him. So I was talking about his journey to India, and after that with Mustafa al-Ibrahim. It was an interesting story that when he met Mustafa Ibrahim came to Shaykh Abdul Samad, and he was asking about different grammatical matters. So he said, what is the i'rab of Hammalat al-Hatab? وَامْرَأَتُهُ Hammalat al-Hatab in Surah Lahab. وَامْرَأَتُهُ Hammalat al-Hatab. There is a fatha on Hammalat al-Hatab. So Shaykh Abdul Samad said, why you ask me? Ask this gentleman. And he pointed to Taqiudin al-Hilali. He would tell you. So Taqiudin al-Hilali, who was just sitting in a corner of that room, then when he was invited to talk, so he said, yes, Hammalat al-Hatab, it got two qira'ah, and both qira'ah is sab'iyya, and Hammalatul Hatab, then there is no difficulty to understand. وَامْرَأَتُهُ Hammalatul Hatab. Both are marfu. So you can take it as mubtada khabar, you can take it as sifa as well. But if you take it Hammalatul Hatab with fatha upon Hammalatul Hatab, then there is a tense which is here omitted. In Arabic we say mahzuf. So you say agummu Hammalat al-Hatab, that I condemn. So this verb is hidden here. I condemn Hammalat al-Hatab, the carrier of the wood. So in this way, when he explained this i'rab, the man was impressed, and this is how he took him to Al-Basra. And there is another story as well, which will show that how pious he was. He said that when we are going to board the ship, I would say to the English captain, or anyone who is on behalf of the captain who was checking the travelers, because he knows me, and he was a rich person. So this is why you can say that he has already bought a good section of the whole ship, you can say. So he said that one of my laborers, one of my servants, who was supposed to be on this ship, he is going by a boat. So he would not be on that ship. So I am going to announce his name when he is going to ask, what is your name? You just say Ahmad, which was the name of that servant. Don't tell your name, because as my servant, you will be accepted without a ticket, without any checking at all. So Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali said that I can't lie. I'm not going to say that. So he said, all right, then keep quiet. I will shout that this is my servant Ahmad. So this is how he boarded the ship, and he traveled to Al-Basra. So for Al-Basra, he stayed there, and he studied with a great Shaykh, Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti. That is another Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, not the one who is the author of Adwa'ul Bayan, not the one who is my teacher as well in Al-Madinah, because he comes late in our discussion. So this Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, that is another Shaykh who was in Al-Basra, and he got a Madrasatul Najat al-Ahliya, where he studied with him as well. And then later in 1927, that was the time of King Abdulaziz. Then King Abdulaziz has already taken Al-Hijaz by that time. So he went to Al-Hijaz, and he went to Al-Madinah, where he became Al-Mushrif, a supervisor to the teachers. And there is an interesting story related to that. This I'm going to mention later. Then he came to Makkah, where he stayed there in Al-Mahad al-Saudi, the Saudi institution. And now he was trying to get a higher degree. So this is why he said, let me go to India once again and try to acquire a MA, for example, or a doctorate. So this is why he wanted to travel to India. So in 1929, he went to India, where he was invited by Shaykh Sulaiman al-Nadawi to join Nadwatul Ulama, where he stayed there for 4 years. That was the period when he was teaching in Nadwa, and that is the time when Shaykh Abul Hasan Nadawi and Shaykh Masood al-Nadawi and Shaykh Kazim al-Nadawi and Shaykh Abul Lais al-Nadawi, all of them, they were his students. In the very same period, in 1929, he went to Afghanistan as well, because he wanted to see the scholars there. That was his ambition, to meet the scholars. So he went there, and then he came back to Iraq. And later, just for this, his ambitions to get a degree, in 1936, he went to Germany, and he joined Bonn University, from where he took the doctorate degree in 1940. In 1940, that he took this degree, and we are going to mention more about it later. And that was the time, you can say that the Second World War has already begun. So he was there, as if he was detained there. So from Berlin, he used to transmit through Berlin radio his speeches in Arabic, and mostly it was about the Palestine as well. And he was commending Sheikh Muhammad Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Palestine. And of course, as long as he was in Germany, he was speaking about the other colonial powers at that time, including the British Empire and the French who were colonizing all the Western Africa at that time. And that was the main reason why he got so much opposition from the colonial powers in Al-Maghrib, in his own country, when he got back, because he was speaking against them when he was in Germany. So he stayed there, and in 1942, you can say that during the war itself, he came back to Al-Maghrib, Morocco, to a city called Tatwan. And there he stayed for quite good 5 years. And that is the time of his dawah in Al-Maghrib, the real dawah which he had done at that time. In 1947, and that is the year when Pakistan was established, as you know that. So in 1947, he was called upon to go to Iraq, where he joined the university, started teaching in Baghdad, and stayed there for a good time, around 11 years, because in 1958, when there was a rebellion, or you can say that a coup against the King Faisal by Abdul Karim Qasim and Abdul Salam Arif, at that time, he has to leave Iraq, and he came back to Morocco once again, where he was given the duty to teach in the University of Rabat, the capital, and also its branch in Fas, which is known as Fez in English. There he stayed there teaching and doing dawah once again. But in 1968, he was invited by a Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, the president of Islamic University at that time, to come and teach in Al-Madinah. So that is the second time he was coming to Al-Madinah to teach. And there he stayed for 6 years, because he came back in 1974. So that was the time when he was in Al-Madinah. I have already left Medina at that time, because I joined myself. I joined the University of Al-Madinah in 1962. This is 2 years before my father. My father came after me, 2 years after me. He was appointed as a professor, and he and Sheikh Muhammad bin Dalvi. So I took lessons from them in my last 2 years of the university, from 1964 to 1966. And 67, I left Al-Madinah. I went to East Africa for Dawah. So from East Africa, when I used to come and visit my father, because my father was still there, he stayed there in Medina till 1980. So in one of my visits, yes, I met Shaykh Taqiudin al-Hilali. And as we know that he has lost his sight long before that time. So I saw him in that way when he was not able to see at all, but I met him. So 1974, he went back to his country, and then till his death in 1987, till 1987, he remained there, and he died in Darul Bayda, which is known as Casablanca in English, at the age of 94 years, as I have mentioned in the beginning. So that was his long life, with so many travelings. And I wonder how this person was traveling, sometime walking, sometime riding on a donkey, and sometime by ship. And yes, there was a few traveling by air as well. So that was about the second point. Now we come to the third point, which is ad-dawa ilallah. Yani he is a person who is known with dawa ilallah throughout his life. When he went to Egypt, he went to Iskandariya first. Al-Iskandariya, because when he journeyed by ship, so the first port of Egypt he is going to hit, that is Alexandria, which is Al-Iskandariya. And there was a good population of Moroccan people living there, and they were all Tijani. But when they heard about him, and they knew that Shaykh Abdul Qadir, Shaykh Muhammad Taqiudin Abdul Qadir al-Hilali, because his lineage goes back to Al-Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Al-Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. So he is from Sadat. He is from the family of Sayyidina Ali. So this is why he was held in a great esteem, with a great respect by all the people. So they gave respect to Shaykh Taqiudin al-Hilali there. And the Shaykh Taqiudin al-Hilali, in the beginning, he did not disclose that he is no more Tijani, but he was just lecturing to them from time to time. But they discovered that Shaykh Taqiudin al-Hilali goes to a mosque which is known to be the mosque of Wahhabi people, or Al-Hadith people, or Salafi people. When they knew that, they said, what is happening to him? So let him ask some questions. So they started questioning him in a different ways to find out what is his real madhab. And of course, he could not hide from them what he believed. So when they knew, they wrote to one of their sheikh, whose name is Muhammad ibn Mubarak al-Susi. They asked him, what is your opinion about Taqiudin al-Hilali? And he wrote to them, yes, he is, because he is from Sadat and he was very much respected fellow. So give him proper respect, but don't take knowledge from him. That was his answer. So this is why he was deserted by his own people. And so he has to find out some other avenues or some other places to do his dawah. So in the, you can say in the south of Egypt, which is Asyut, so he went to Asyut and he started his dawah there. The people in Asyut, the Salafi people in Asyut, they were very happy to welcome him. And he said that they took him to a small village called Rairamun, and that was the journey on the back of a donkey. So where with his dawah, all the people, they were all very much engrossed deep into tariqah, into Sufiya, into bid'ah. A lot of bid'ah were there. But with his speeches in the mosque, people started coming to him, listening to him. And they used to leave their practices, and they started entering into the madhab of Kitab and Sunnah. So it brought a great change. They said, man, you have to stay with us. We are not going to allow you to leave us. You can marry here, but please don't leave us. Anyhow, he stayed there for a few months, and but he has changed the whole area with his dawah. To such an extent that one of their imam, a Sufi imam, came to visit them, and he found that faces are different faces. They are not welcoming him as they used to welcome him. They are not giving him money as they used to give him long ago. So he was surprised, and he knew what is the reason. So how to get them back? What he did, the place from where he used to give his speeches, he brought a wooden box, a big wooden box, and on the box, on the box itself, he got a carpet where he used to sit and address his people. And then he advertised among the people that he is not happy with them and he is going to leave. So people, of course, they were very worried that our Shaykh is going to leave us. So what he did, that when there was no one in the room, he opened the lid of that box and he has hidden himself in the box itself. Now the students came to see him and they did not find the Shaykh there in the room, and the rumor was everywhere that the Shaykh has left. He was angry with us. So everybody is looking for him in all the corners of the village, in all the ways leaving the village. They did not find him. After that, they came back once again to his room and they found him sitting there. Oh, you are here? Where you were? Oh, he said, because there was a jihad going on in Libya between the Muslims and the Italians. I just went there. I was there to support them. And I'm just coming back from Libya. You see, this is how he made them fool. And when they heard that our Shaykh is of such a great esteem and he was traveling to Libya for that purpose, all flocked back to him and kissing his hands and kissing his head and offering his money. So you can understand that what type of people they were there. I may be mentioning incidents from here and there without any proper historical order. When he was in Tetuan, later after, as I said, when he came back to Tetuan from Germany and he started his dawah, so he revived many sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. As you know that mazhab, according to Malikiya, when they pray, they don't they don't place their hand, the right hand and the left hand like this on the chest in the prayer. They just make it loose. They just don't fold it. So they don't fold it on their chest. So he started this sunnah, that is the folding the hand on your chest in the prayer and doing rafa al-yadain, when you go to ruku, raise your hands, and when you go to ruku, and then raise your hand when you come back from the ruku, and in the same way reading Bismillah before Al-Fatiha. So he revived all these sunnah and people followed it. And he said, but some people were so much prejudiced in their mazhab. They used to say, Nahnu Khalilun. Nahnu Khalilun means that we follow the book Al-Khalil, Mukhtasar Al-Khalil, which is in Maliki Fiqh. We are the follower of that book, and we are with Khalil. If he goes to Al-Jannah, we will go to Al-Jannah. If he goes to the Hellfire, we will go to the Hellfire. And this is why he said to them, oh, you are saying such thing. Uffil lakum walima ta'buduna min dunillah. The saying of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam to his people. And these people were so much enemy to him that they wanted to kill him a number of times. About 25 people, they plotted against him. And even they collected an amount of blood money that when he is killed, and his people are going to ask for the blood money, we can offer them that blood money. So they have gone to that extent to collect the blood money and kill him. But when they consulted their leader, who's called Amir Khalid al-Raisuni, so he said, no, that is not right, don't do it. So this is why they could not materialize this conspiracy. And later he says that one of them, who was the brother of Khalid al-Raisuni, his name is Ahmad al-Raisuni, he is the one who gave him his place to stay, because Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali at that time, he was suffering from asthma. And the climate near the sea was not suitable for him. So he wanted to go up to the mountains. So there are mountains called Shafsha'un. So he went to Shafsha'un, where Ahmad al-Raisuni hosted him, and then he told him about this conspiracy as well. And Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali also mentions that how the people were so engrossed in their bid'ah that there is an old person. He is a murid of a young man who claimed that I am the Qutb. I am the Qutb, because they say that in there are Qutb who are running this universe, and he is one of the Qutb. And even he offered him his daughter to marry. So that was the person. And then this old man said to this young man who is the Qutb that we want to go for Hajj. And because we know that a wali, a sheikh like you, he will take only one step to Makkah. Just in one step he would be in Makkah. So when you go to Makkah, then take us with you as well, and take my wife as well, your wife as well. He said, no, yes, we are going to do that. Now the Hajj time has come. It was the day of Arafah. People are now assembling in Arafah for Hajj. So the man came to him, Ya Shaykh, when we are going to Makkah and when we are going to stand in Arafat. He said, no, come with me. And then they went to the roof of the house, where there was, you can say, a small room type building around which they can do some circling. So he said, here you have to do some circles, which is tawaf. So do tawaf here around this building. And then he said, you are in Arafat now, and so do your dua, and your Hajj is acceptable. At that time, the man realized that he has been fooled by his sheikh, by his qutb. So he started beating him. And he said that divorce my daughter, because his daughter was wed to him. And then they threw him out of the town. And he also says about this sheikh that how he used to give fatwa, contradictory fatwa. Any person, there, for example, two persons came to him in a dispute, in a financial dispute. One was a Muslim trader and the other was a Jewish trader. So when the Muslim one came, he gave a fatwa in his favor. And when the Jewish came, he gave his fatwa in his favor as well. And both fatwa at that time, because the area was still occupied, in those days, Morocco or Al-Maghrib was occupied by a greater part by French and a smaller part by Spanish. And there was an influence of Germany as well in some parts of the area. So the matter came to the Spanish resident at that time. Resident is the person who was looking after that area. And when he saw two contradictory fatwas, he became so angry. How are your shuyukh? They are making a mockery of your Sharia. We don't believe in such type of Sharia. So in this way, how he discovered that this sheikh was spoiling the situation. And then the person of this sheikh was, of course, he was asked to leave the place. He also mentioned, Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali, that these people, when there was a time and there was no rain, so instead of praying Salatul Istisqa, they used to go to the graves of their mashayikh and offer in sacrifice a bull. And another bull, another grave of, at the grave of another sheikh. And if it was a smaller sheikh, then they are going to sacrifice a goat only or a sheep only. Another of their bid'ah was sometime how they are going to get the rain. They will take a horse, and on the forehead of the horse, they are going to write this ayah of Surah Al-Shura, وَهُوَ الَّذِي يُنَزِّلُ الْغَيْثَ بَعْدَ مَا قَنِطُوا وَيَنْشُرُ رَحْمَتَهُ وَهُوَ الْوَلِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ. He is the person who, he is Allah who brings down the rain. And he is the one who spreads his rahmah. وَهُوَ الْوَلِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ وَهُوَ الَّذِي يُنَزِّلُ الْغَيْثَ بَعْدَ مَا قَنَطُوا وَيَنْشُرُ رَحْمَتَهُ وَهُوَ الْوَلِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ. So instead of praying, they used to do this action. And there was another way of asking for rain. They will take 70,000 pebbles, which were given to 70 people. Each person got a bag of 1,000 pebbles. And the same ayah is going to be read upon each verse. And after that, all these bags are going to be thrown into the river. When they reach the level of depth of the river, they are tied with a rope. So the one side of the rope is tied with the bags and the other side to a tree on the bank of the river. And they say that as long as this rope is not cut, the rain will start coming. Anyhow, Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali went to the desert, and then he prayed with all the people around, and Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the rain for them. In the same way, he mentioned about Iraq and the bid'ah there, and he himself, he did not pray in a mosque where there was a grave, because normally in Iraq, all the mosques, there must have a grave therein, even in the mosque which is named after Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. Except for one masjid, this is called Masjid al-Dahan, where there was no grave. And the mutawalli of that masjid, the caretaker or mutawalli of that masjid, asked Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali to be al-Khatib there. So he started khutbah there, and he told the people that there is no sunnah before Jummah prayer. The sunnah is after Jummah prayer. So he revived that sunnah as well. He revived the sunnah in Azan as well. And those people who made that coup in 1958, one of them was Abdul Salam Arif. He was among his pupils, and he was a Salafi at that time. But Abdul Karim Qasim, later, he threw him out, but put him into the prison. And later Abdul Salam Arif was able to come out of the prison, and then he became the president. And at that time, he asked Taqiudin Hilali to come back once again to Iraq, but anyhow, Taqiudin Hilali did not accept. There are many things, but now I have to be very, very brief because I can see in the time as well. His debates, the fourth point is his debates. And he says about the debates are munazara. Don't do munazara. Except if you are forced to do it, then you can enter into munazara. He himself, he did so many munazarat with so many people. He mentioned one Ahmad al-Siddiq who did debate, and that debate was in writing about Hadith and Nasa'i. Imam al-Qayyim has mentioned him in his book At-Turuq al-Hikmiyah about that woman, somebody raped her. She raped her and ran away. So she shouted for help. A second person came and he wanted to chase the other person. And by this shouting, more people came. And instead of the real person who was the culprit. They brought the second person who was chasing after him. And this is how the woman did not recognize that who was the real person. So there is this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ wanted to make had upon the second person who was not the real culprit. But at that time, the real person came and then he admitted. About this hadith, there was a debate and Shaykh wanted to prove that this hadith is not authentic. Another debate which is with another Shaykh is called Habibullah Maya Ash-Shanqiti. That person, he used to say that Salafi people are of three types. He was in Al-Hijaz, in Makkah at that time. He said the Salafi of Najd, they say that they are all kuffar. Why? Because they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the heaven. The Salafiyah of Egypt and Syria, he said that they are dhullal. They have gone astray because they don't follow taqlid. And the Salafi of India, he says that they are in error. Mukhti'un, they are in error. Why did they say that they are not the real kuffar? Why? Because they say that at least they come to Masjid al-Nabawi and they visit the grave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the reason was that he was financed, this Shaykh was financed by a great Indian scholar, Indian trader, Abdul Wahab al-Dehlavi. So that was the reason. And at that time, during that time when he was there, deputations came from Indonesia, some pilgrims came from Indonesia and they were Salafi. And because they wanted to speak about Tawheed and about Quran and Sunnah, so these people, that was the time when Makkah, Al-Madinah, Al-Hijaz was still in the hand of Al-Ashraf. So these Indonesians, they were imprisoned, and even Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali has to remain in hiding for 7 days, because of this fitna. Now, another thing which he mentioned about when during the time of the King Abdulaziz, when everything was settled. So this is the second time when he came to Al-Hijaz, and Shaykh Abdullah bin al-Hasan al-Shaykh, he offered him to be Imam in Al-Madinah. Taqiudin Hilali said, with one condition, I accept. And this condition is that in Ruku and Sujood, I have to say Tasbihat 10 times, subhanallah. He said that will be a very long time. People are not going to tolerate it. So he said, then I can't accept it. So this is how he was given the other job, to be the supervisor of the teachers in the mosque. And then he got his munazarat when he was in Basra with the Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Kazimi, who was a Shia, about the hadith ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha. And Shaykh Abdullah bin Bulhaid, that Shaykh only became angry with him because he used, Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali said that the earth is round, his Qura is round. And he said, no, it is flat. So because of that, he became very angry with him. And later, this developed into his expulsion, or his job to be stopped and to be terminated. And then he went back to Makkah, and after Makkah, he came back to, as we earlier said, he went to other places. The other point is he publicized so many books of Salaf, and in them is the book Kashf al-Shubuhat, because Kashf al-Shubuhat is the book of Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. So he introduced it in Al-Maghrib by leaving the name Abdul Wahhab. So he said Muhammad ibn Sulaiman ad-Dar'i, his grandfather, Muhammad bin Sulaiman. So this is why it was known to the people, and people accepted it. In the same way, he publicized the booklet of Shaykh Al-Imam Taymiyyah, Ziyaratul Qubur, by his name, omitting Ibn Taymiyyah. He said Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim al-Harrani. And when he received a lot of copies of Fathul Majid, he did not distribute them free. He said that if a book is free, people are not going to read it. And he mentioned the saying of Bernard Shaw, that if you find a book free, if you get a book free, that book is not going to be read. So he used to charge them a little charge of that. And he also, Shaykh Taqiudin Hilali, when he was in Maghrib, he contributed in publicizing Lisanuddin, a magazine, then Dawatul Haq, another magazine, and then he used to write for the magazine of Al-Ikhwan at the invitation of Shaykh Hasan al-Banna, the founder of Al-Ikhwan. He used to write in Jadidatul Fath of Muhibbuddin al-Khatib, and when he was in Nadwa in Lucknow, he started a Diya, very famous magazine of Nadwatul Ulama. So, and of course, in the end of his life, when he was in Medina, he translated the meaning of Al-Quran, which is known as the Noble Al-Quran, and he also translated Al-Lulu wal-Marjan in English. And he himself, he mastered 7 languages, 7 languages. He was a great scholar in all aspects of life. The point number 6, that he was very much mustagni, self-sufficient. He does not want to take money from the people, just like as our brother was saying about Bahjat al-Bitar, and there are so many stories how he rejected the money. He did not want to take money. And even when he went to Afghanistan and he was given some money to go back to India, because that was their practice. Whenever a visitor comes, they did not give him money. They give him lodging in the hotel, and he is provided with food, but no money. So, but at the time when he is retreating, they will give him money enough to go back to his country. But he did not accept that money when he was given, when he said that I'm going back to India. Why? Because he knew there are some visitors from Arabs at that time, and they became so angry. They started shouting at Afghan people that you people are miser people, you don't give us money. So that was a bad reputation. This is why he did not accept money from them. And I'm just making very brief now, about his efforts against colonial powers. And I said to you that when he was in Germany, he was transmitting his speeches at that time in favor of Germany at that time. So this is why the French and English, they were all dead against him. He said about French something very interesting. He said, "Radi Faransa ma hayitu." I am an enemy. I will remain enemy to France as long as I live. وَإِنْ أَمُتْ فَأُوصِي أَحِبَّائِي يُعَادُونَ هَبَادِي. And when I die, I say to all those who love me that you remain enemy to him. Now, about those things which he accepted as his errors. For example, when he was Tatuan, he was shaving his beard. People said to him that you are saying Quran Sunnah, but you shave your beard. So he said to them that when I was in Germany, I started shaving. And he believed that it is a minor sin. It is not a major sin. So he admitted his error. And then he, of course, he started growing his beard as well. And in Afghanistan, when he caught with malaria, very, very strong malaria, and nothing benefited him. He said that I heard some people, they are doing one ruqya that they used to write on 3 papers the name of Fir'aun and Haman and Qarun, and then they burn it. Yes. So he did that. And he said that I benefited a little about this after this ruqya. But it was actually, he himself says that it was actually because when the papers were burned and the smoke started rising with some heat into it, that is what benefited him. So anyhow, he admitted that what he done, it was wrong. And another thing which he did, that when he was going to Afghanistan, he must have the name of Afghanistan among the countries he's allowed to visit in his passport. And Afghanistan was not there. And he was now in Lahore, but he came to Peshawar. So from Peshawar, he has to go back to Bombay to French consulate to get his passport done. His passport was French at that time. So that he did, that he fabricated in his passport, and by erasing, there was a word very similar to Afghanistan. He erased it and put Afghanistan there, and nobody detected it. So this is how he was able to get into Afghanistan. Now I'm looking at the time. Let me come to his death, which was on 22nd of June 1987, which is 25th of Shawwal 1407. Before his death, he was on his bed, and he used to do tayammum all the time. Tayammum with actual clay, not upon stone. And one day he said, no, bring me wudu, bring me water. So he did his wudu, he prayed 2 rakah prayer, and then he asked someone to read Surah Yasin. In the end of Surah Yasin, when he reached to this verse, وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. When he read this ayah, who is going to give life to the bones when they are rotten completely? He said himself, the following ayah, قُلْ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي يَنْشَاهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ خَلْقٍ عَلِيمٌ. Say, the one who created it first is going to enlive them, give them another life. وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ خَلْقٍ عَلِيمٌ. And at that time, he raised his index finger and he passed away. That was how he died. And very briefly, if we can make it in 1 minute as well, that throughout his life, he married 5 women, 1 Algerian, 2 Saudis, 1 Iraqi, 1 from German, and 1 from Morocco. It comes to 6, but we have to verify this number. And from them, he got 4 daughters and 2 sons. As far as books, he wrote about 43 books, and there are 3 books in which he got his hawashi, his footnotes, and 5 books of poetry, and 6 translations, including the translation of the Quran. And according to some researchers, about 900 articles he wrote. 900 articles he wrote. And he met so many shuyukh and so many dignitaries in his life, like Sheikh Abdurrahman Mubarakpuri, and I have mentioned few names before. Some more names are like Shakib Arsalan. This is why he named his son Shakib, because he loved Shakib Arsalan. Rashid Ridwa, Muhibbuddin Khatib, Muhammad bin Ramin al-Shamqiti, Muhammad bin Ibrahim, Mufti of Saudi Arabia, Abdul Zahir Abu Samh in Egypt, Muhammad Ramli in Egypt, and then he got Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Abdul Rauf al-Sabban in Makkah, Hamiduddin Farahi, Abu Kalam Azad. This I have already mentioned, Hamid al-Fiqi, Muhammad Nasif, Muhammad bin Abdul Karim al-Khattabi, a great warrior from Morocco, Mufti Amin al-Husseini, Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Razak al-Hamza, Abdul Aziz al-Khawli, his brother Muhammad al-Arabi al-Hilali. He used to be in some of his journeys, so he was a great helper to him. And among his students are, I mentioned Maulana Abul Hasan Nadawi, Masood al-Nadawi, Sa'id al-Azami, Abu Lays al-Nadawi, Kazim al-Nadawi, Sheikh Hamad al-Ansari. But his Hamad al-Ansari and also Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Hamad al-Abbad has said about him that Sheikh Taqiudin, his students have wasted him, means did not benefit from his knowledge. Both of them, they have remarked this. Sheikh Umar bin Hasan al-Shaykh, Sheikh Muhammad bin Nasir al-Abudi, the great traveler who wrote so many books of his traveling, and Sheikh Abdul Wadud bin Abdul Tawwab Multani, when he first went to India and he taught in Madrasa Ali Jan in Delhi, that was one of his students. So this is how there is a great list of his students and his teachers. And this speech still got so many so many points to be discussed later, and it needs more research. I am very interested to know what type of speeches he was doing when he was in Germany from Berlin radio. This is still to be covered by me, inshallah, in further research. Alhamdulillah, we are we have already finished the time, so I take your leave now. Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you very much. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. It was a very, mashallah, beneficial talk, mashallah. Very enlightening as usual, mashallah, very detailed, especially about the great scholars of India, Saudi Arabia, from which Shaykh Suhaib Hasan as well benefited from many of them. So, mashallah.